Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 6 of Outlaw Star. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Gene and the crew have named the Outlaw Star and sort of made it their own, but despite cashing in a couple favors that were owed to Hilda by the Blue Heaven, they haven't really outfitted the Outlaw Star with weapons, so now they've decided to hit up a guy Gene knows called Fred Lowe. And this has elicited a variety of reactions. Melfina doesn't know what's going on. Jim is recalcitrant, and Gene says, no, there's nothing wrong with Fred. But we've learned that, he may be batting for the other team, and therefore, Jim is on the menu. And if that weren't enough, we were informed by the lovely narrator that there is, in all likelihood, an assassin after Fred. So, things are gonna get real interesting in short order, I imagine. I forgot to mention that the Katarl Aisha clan, she was sort of fobbed off by the others. They conflicted with her, but then, they kind of gave her the business, sticking her with a large bill. So, naturally, she's going to show up again at some point, undoubtedly unhappy, but, it seems like Gene's got bigger issues right now, namely a very hot re-entry to a planet, which, from what little I know about space travel, re-entry is the big thing, it's very difficult to escape a planet's gravitational pull and all that. But then, coming back is also a big deal, because, if you do things wrong, the atmosphere will burn you up. Or, if you sort of approach the planet at the wrong angle, it'll deflect you. Just because, the difference in media you're traveling through from, the vacuum or near vacuum space to something with an atmosphere, that's a massive change in density from, nothing to something. And, Gene seems to have survived the atmosphere, but then the problem becomes landing the ship, and, given what we've seen of the orientation, this is sort of like, reversing into a traffic space, which, people struggle with. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not intuitive to drive a car in reverse, and, this thing's a heck of a lot bigger than a car, so, I don't know. I don't think, on my second day driving, I would be confident backing a car into a parking space. So, despite the difficulties, I feel like you can't be too hard on Gene. I guess the other issue is that, like, he wasn't really banking on being captain of this ship either. You know, it sort of seemed to me that Hilda would have been the obvious choice for captain had she stuck around and not bought the farm the way she did. Oh boy. So Jim's trying to weasel out of this Fred Lowe business, but there's just no getting out of it. Ooh. Wow, okay, so they just, like, they rent a car and they take the big 3-hour car trip. You know, that's interesting. You know, there's the matter of their property that was on planet before all this that's, you know, probably accruing fees. I mean, I get Gene wants to just, like, get this business over with, arm the ship and all that, but, it might not do to just keep racking up fees, you know? Alright, so this guy here, Fred Lowe, he's mentioning, like, look, Gene, you never call, you never write, but, I'm starting to suspect why that might be the case, you know? Oh, buddy. Yeah, there's no escape from this suffering for Jim. Oh dear, Jim. Oh dear. There is really no respite for him. He's just gonna suffer, I suppose. Oh dear. I think that real nonplussed reaction to Melfina just gives away the whole game, you know? It's like, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Oh dear. You know, despite everything, at least Fred has a head for business, you know? Like, he has this understanding that if he doesn't expand the business beyond what his father did, then he will be considered a failure, so, you know, better to, succeed, I guess. Man. Fred's just pushing buttons immediately. What a wacky character. You know, I almost hate to say it, but I think I know why someone would want to assassinate him, you know? Like, it kinda checks out. You know, I feel like you might have pulled one of these silly pranks on someone less understanding than Gene. So it seems like Gene has made a bit of a miscalculation here. You know, he was kind of hoping, I guess, to get all this stuff for free or at least a steep discount. But it seems like that's not going to be the case here. You know, Fred's saying business is business, you know? So, I don't know, man. Ooh. So it seems like, despite the cost of everything, there are other extenuating circumstances. You know, Fred's making an exception to his one rule that, like, he doesn't ask questions. You know, he's now asking questions because there's a grappler ship involved, them being sort of especially rare and not something he can get through his normal avenues. Oh dear. You know, it's never a good thing when you have to say, like, will you just give me an estimate? Like, that's asking for a lot more zeros on the number than you would probably like to see. Ooh. So now the hired help is being, kinda rude to Gene, like, alright there, buddy. Yeah, so I guess everyone's gonna be suffering here. Probably not least of all Fred, considering that red-cloaked figure. You know, that kinda seems like the garb an assassin might wear. So I think I kind of know where this is going. You know, it doesn't exactly take a good solid memory of this show, but I get the feeling that taking care of this assassin will be a nifty little favor done in exchange for, free weapons, or at the very least, heavily discounted weapons. Yeah, so things aren't looking good for Fred. His 2 bodyguards are dead. But, his would-be assassin is, I don't know. Like, she's giving him 5 minutes to live. This seems kinda like a tactical mistake to me. Hypothetically, if I were a hitman and I was assigned to kill someone, I don't think I would give them 5 minutes. I think I would say, like, alright, last words, now, or die. And even then, that's pretty lenient for a hired killer, I feel like, the standard thing to do would just be to kill them before they know what's going on, right? I mean, Fred, he thinks to be making a fight of things, but I guess it's kinda moot now that, Jean has barged in. I mean, it's all sort of like incidental that he stumbled upon this. He was probably returning the estimate, but now that he's here, maybe he can do something. Turn the tides at the very least, or buy some time. Now, I said earlier that this might be just what Jean needs to get a discount, but surely he's not going to hold that over Fred's head, right? Like, Fred's like, oh, Jean, help me, save me, but it would be an awfully low-down thing to just sort of say that right now. It's like, well, I don't know if I can help you unless you give me a little discount. I'm short on money. I mean, I guess it's kind of moot for right now, Fred isn't exactly in a position to start discussing terms with Jean. Oh, Jean. I was gonna say, he's kind of got the upper hand here with a gun. Assuming the assassin stays at a distance, he can just kind of shoot her. But he's decided to render things fair by picking up a sword of his own. And I guess he does also have a sidearm. Ooh. See, this is why you don't give your victim 5 minutes to live. A little alarm went off, and she's like, oh, darn, I failed to do it. Like, if you were working on, a sort of deadline, maybe you shouldn't, taking your time. And now she's saying, like, okay, you get to live for now, but, like, I'm gonna get you later. Here we go. So Jean's like, yep, I'll help you with the assassin, but you gotta pay me. Alright. So, Jean, here we go. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Once Fred sort of lets slip that this assassin never fails to kill someone, kind of like she just did, then Jean's like, oh, well, I'll revise my estimate upwards. So, Suzaka here, as she has been referred to, I mean, she's making it clear that, like, first things first, if she wants to kill Fred Lowe, she's gonna have to take care of the quote-unquote bodyguard first, that bodyguard being Jean. Which leads me to believe she's probably gonna try something untoward. I mean, at this point in time, I feel like if Jean's serious about this whole business, he's probably going to be sticking right around. Ooh. Oh, that's interesting. A wooden sword got through the metal detectors. It does make sense, but, I'm kind of incongruously reminded of Gintama, because the main character he had a wooden sword as well. But that was due to a sword ban rather than anything else. And even then, the wooden sword was kind of pushing it. So it seems like Suzaka probably uses, like, maybe not Tao magic, but, like, something here. It's not just a wooden sword, Ooh. So only now does Jean really recognize the true stakes of this predicament. You know, the idea is that the assassin's likely to come after him, which, you know, not exactly great, but... Oh. So Jean is, I guess, kinda uncaring. You know, he's just saying, like, oh, we need to find a hotel so I can get some sleep and all that, but that seems like a singularly foolish thing to do. Because, like, Fred might be safe for the time being. The assassin said, I'll be back by next sunset. But, like, she's gonna come after Jean for certain, right? Well, that was quick, I guess. So it's interesting that she's phrasing this as a duel rather than an assassination. See, I would have thought that after he had interfered with Fred, she would have just tried to, like, get the drop on him and kill him. But I guess it's not to be borne. You know, she's willing to be honorable, which is kind of a strange thing for an assassin, but I guess it tracks with what she's already done. You know, namely sticking to her little alarm clock and addressing Jean rather than ambushing him. It's kind of interesting in that Jean seems to be the quote-unquote dishonorable one because he's not exactly keen on having a duel, and he's also brought a gun to this sword fight. Not that it's done him too much good thus far. You know, he's mainly sort of used it for covering fire to keep the assassin's head down. Ooh. So, Suzaku's just saying, like, you know, her feat of cutting that truck in half, that was simply strength, not like a special technique or anything. And that kind of bodes really poorly for Jean, considering that she is wielding a wooden sword. You know, I guess you could kind of make the assumption that the wood is some sort of, like, exotic alien material. Or exotic alien wood, because, like, it's certainly nothing earth-grown, right? Nothing could do that. But that said, even if she is monstrously strong, like, I feel like the sword would also have to be ridiculously durable to cut a truck in half. So, Suzaku's getting ahead of herself again, you know, saying that your worldly desires have cost you your life. I guess she feels it's a safe assumption that she's gonna kill Jean, but, like, she hasn't done it yet. And she's also, sort of willing and able to be goaded into reckless action. Because I feel like Jean probably wouldn't, like, try to, appeal to her impulsivity unless he knew something she didn't. And, you know, like, whatever he's trying here, catching the sword with those light shields, like, that's not a foolproof thing and hasn't succeeded yet, but it has at the very least prevented him from dying horribly. Ooh. Alright, so some assassin she is if you can just kind of disarm her like that. I mean, it may well be for naught. Well, I take that back. Oh dear indeed. I feel like, maybe her choice of attire is, less than ideal for assassination work too. Oh, Jean. You know, I can't say I blame him for just raking her over the coals like this. Like, she does kind of deserve it for being an assassin, but, ooh. So that's interesting. You know, she seems genuinely afraid that the sword can be broken. You know, the sword likely being her livelihood. Alright, so for a supposed master assassin here, she's, shockingly naive, thinking that, like, okay, I don't need any fancy techniques to beat this guy, and having that backfire against her like this. And now, basically, Jean's got her, like, by the hair, you know. She can't really do anything in the position she's in, and, I don't know. She seems unwilling to get rid of her contract and stop trying to kill Fred. But at the same time, okay, I was gonna say, surely Jean wouldn't actually kill her, but, okay. Jean seems to be going in on this with, a lot more faith than is likely warranted here, you know, just sort of assuming that she's not gonna do anything. Yeah, alright. So he's just sort of saying, like, look, you gotta kill me first on your pride. Huh. I mean, I feel like when she says something like, I was holding back initially and I would have won otherwise, maybe it's not a good idea to leave the assassin alive and fully armed. And, you know, like he's saying to Jim, you know, I'm much harder to kill than Fred is. Like, that's not any consolation if you were to end up dead. At the very least, he seems to have made an impression on the assassin. You know, this isn't to say she's gonna change her ways or anything, but maybe she'll think twice before doing something silly. Although I guess that's the other matter, you know. Suzaka was only an assassin. Like, this doesn't take into account that there was a client who ordered the hit. So... oh dear. So despite Fred's life still being kind of in danger, it seems like he still has seen fit to stick Jean with a pretty hefty bill. You know, there was a large discount, but unfortunately, even after a large discount, there is still a large bill. So unfortunately, I guess Jean's gonna have to start finding some sort of intergalactic treasure in short order if he wants to pay off his debts. Man, I feel like Jean feels pretty silly after, you know, sending the assassin his way for what ended up being a 30% discount. You know, he basically invited way more trouble into the bargain than anything else. Especially as how Suzaku is unwilling to give up, so he's got an assassin and the Katarl after him. You know, it really seems like he's just gathering more and more enemies as time goes on. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.